Hey everyone, in today's video, we are talking all about sentence writing. Now, about a year ago, I uploaded this video right here, and in that video, I walked through how I teach my K-2 students, what sentences are, the naming part, the telling part. I walked through a bunch of activities. So if you're looking for something like that, go check out that video. I will link it down in the description below. But in today's video, I want to focus on expanding our sentences. So at this point, students will know how to write a simple sentence, and the goal with this video is to teach you ideas and activities for them to take that simple sentence and expand it into something a little more detailed. So if you are ready, I have 3 easy ideas and activities for you that I think you're going to like. So give this video a like, subscribe to my channel, and let's get started. Alright, activity number 1 is to use question words. Now, I believe I did mention this activity in that other sentence writing video because it is included in my sentence writing unit, where I have students take some simple sentences and then we ask ourselves those question words to expand it. Let me show you what I mean. I like to let my students know that they can do this with any sentence, but based on what type of texts we are writing, we sometimes ask ourselves different questions. For example, here are 2 anchor charts that I typically use when teaching this to my students. This blue one here lets us add some details to our fiction stories. So we like to ask who, what, where, when, and how, you know, some of those W words there. And then we have how, of course. But we might ask ourselves, who is the main character in this story? Who else is in this story? What is the main character doing right now? What will they do next? What's a problem the main character has? Where is the main character during the story? Where's the character going next? When does the story take place? When will the character solve their problem? How does the character feel in the story? And how will this story end? And then if we're writing nonfiction text, our questions might look slightly different. We might be wondering, who is this book for, right? There's not a main character in a nonfiction text, so we're asking different questions. Who are some experts of this topic? What tools does the reader need to complete the steps? What do the tools look like? And you can go ahead and read the others, but these are 2 anchor charts I like to use when giving my students some examples. Now, like with any lesson, but especially in K-2, we like to start whole group where I am kind of modeling this for the students and we're working through it together. Here's an example of how I took a simple sentence and used those question words to make it a little more detailed. So we started with the girl sat. And we did identify that this is a sentence. We have a naming part, the girl, and we have a telling part, she sat. But I tell my students that we know we can make this a little more detailed for our reader. We can add some more details. So first we said who. Who is the girl I'm talking about? The girl is Jenny. So we changed the girl to Jenny. Next I asked where. Okay, where did she sit? Jenny sat at her desk. Then we said why, or what was she doing there? Jenny sat at her desk and ate her snack. So we took the simple sentence, the girl sat, and made it a super sentence by adding a lot more details. Now, I have done that lesson many times, and the girl sat always turns into a much more detailed sentence, but always slightly different based on the input I get from my students. And that's an easy warm-up you can do with your students to kind of walk them through that process. Just throw a simple sentence up on the board and have the question words, displayed so students can pick one and add to the sentence. We can see how we can change it up. Now, I do like students to practice this independently as well, so I give them sheets that look like this. It begins with a pretty simple sentence like a kid plays. You can see that this sheet already has the question words there, and I challenge them to turn this sentence into a super sentence by adding at least 2 details. Then they can draw a little illustration, and of course at the bottom they check it for capital letters, punctuation, spaces, and to make sure it makes sense. Here you see some other ones. We have my friend builds. The bird is flying. And with each of those sheets, they just walk through that process of taking a simple sentence and making it a little more detailed. All of those sheets in the anchor charts there are included in my sentence writing unit. It looks like this. It is over on TPT. And if you're in the SJT Writing Club, it is already there for you. So activity number 1 is have students ask question words. All right, activity number 2 is to have students expand sentences by using the words because, but, and so. Now, this is a great activity because it gets students to expand sentences for different purposes. When students are using the word because to expand their sentence, they're giving details and reasons behind something. When they're using the word but to expand their sentence, they're kind of changing direction, right? They're telling us one thing and then giving us like a counter example, or they're changing direction and telling us something else. And when they use the word so to expand their sentences, they're following a cause and effect text structure. So this gives students concrete ways to practice different types of writing as they expand their sentences. Now, when practicing an activity like this one, I love to do it within the context of what we are learning. So let me give you some examples for how to do this with narrative, opinion, and informative writing. For example, in October, we learned a lot about bats. So I might write something on the board like bats are nocturnal. And then I would challenge my students to expand that sentence using because, using but, and using so. And what I love about this activity is not only are students practicing different text structures while writing, but they're also showing you what they've learned. So for example, their sentences might sound like this. Bats are nocturnal because they are mostly active at night. Bats are nocturnal, but some bats, like horseshoe bats, hunt during the day. Bats are nocturnal, so they sleep in trees and caves during the day. As you can see here with these three sentences, students are writing an informative text about bats, but they're sharing what they've learned, right? They're giving some reasons that bats are nocturnal because they're mostly active at night. This shows you that they know what nocturnal means. Bats are nocturnal, but some bats, like horseshoe bats, hunt during the day. This is showing you what they've learned. They're kind of changing direction. Even though most are nocturnal, we did learn about this other bat that's not. And then bats are nocturnal, so they sleep in trees and caves during the day. Again, showing that cause and effect. Now for having students do this with narrative writing, let's pretend we just read the story, The Koala Who Could. Now in this story, Kevin the koala is working on being brave and taking some chances and risks here. So after we read the story, I might write on the board, Kevin was brave, and we can kind of talk about why that was. And then again, I would challenge students to expand that sentence with because, but, and so. Here we have Kevin was brave because he took a chance and made new friends. Kevin was brave, but he was fearful to try new things. And Kevin was brave, so he started trying new things. And again, similar to the bats example, not only are students creating more expanded and detailed sentences, but I can also see what they gathered and learned from the story based on what they write. And lastly, just for an opinion example, I actually did this exact one with students in 2nd grade last week. And here you could have students, pick a favorite season. So for example, I might say, summer is my favorite season. And you can have students pick their own, so they're choosing their own opinion. And then they need to expand that sentence by saying because, but, and so. So summer is my favorite season because I love to go to camp and play with my friends. Summer is my favorite season, but sometimes it gets too hot. Summer is my favorite season, so I am sure to go to the beach as often as I can. Again, 3 great detailed sentences with different text structures that share a little more detailed information to the reader about why summer might be your favorite. So you can do this with any simple sentence. Again, try to connect it to the content you are learning about to have students warm up and practice this, and then they become more used to expanding their sentences with those 3 words. So activity number 2 is to have students expand the same sentence using because, but, and so. All right, activity number 3 for having students expand their sentences is to use sentence combinations. Now I'll say it again, but in K through 2, you'll really want to do this as a whole group warm up first, so students can hear and see different types of sentences and how to write them, and then you want to challenge them to practice it themselves. When they're able to do this consistently, they will then be able to transfer it to their own writing. So a sentence combination looks like this. Here we'll use some of the same examples we did before, but we might say bats are nocturnal. Bats hunt insects. So here we have 2 simple sentences. Again, I would point out to my students that we do have a naming part and we have a telling part, but these sentences are relatively simple. We can make them more detailed. And I challenge my students to combine these 2 sentences into one longer, more detailed sentence. Now there are many different ways students can combine these sentences, but they might say, bats are nocturnal and hunt insects at night. Another example your students might come up with is bats hunt insects at night because they are nocturnal. There are many different ways they can combine these sentences. In those two examples, I hope you noticed one used the word and the other used the word because. So another thing you can do with your students if they're really having trouble combining these sentences, I do like to, again, do this with them first and kind of get their input, hear their ideas, write the different sentences on the board. But if they're having trouble combining them, what you can do is you can give them a word to use to help combine the sentences. So for example, I might write those again. Bats are nocturnal, bats hunt insects, and then next to the sentences, I will write the word and circle it. So if they're having trouble, I will say, okay, let's try to use the word and here to combine the sentences. Or maybe I'll write the word because. Let's try to use the word because here and combine these sentences in some way based on what we know about bats. Using the koala who could, we have two simple sentences. Kevin was brave, Kevin tried something new, and students might choose to combine this by saying Kevin was brave because he tried something new. There they're using the word because. And then for an opinion example, we can use that summer example by saying summer is hot, and I like to swim in summer. Here I might challenge students to use the word so, and they might come up with summer is hot, so I like to swim. And that sentence would show again that cause and effect. It's hot in summer, so I like to swim. They could add on that swimming is fun or they like to swim at the beach. And you can see that you might be able to combine some of these strategies. If they came up with that sentence, it is hot in the summer, so I like to swim, or a variation of that. You could also ask them to go ahead and expand it again by asking some of those question words from activity number 1. Asking students those question words will also help them think of other sentences to write, so we can start expanding our sentences into maybe shorter paragraphs and then longer paragraphs. But you can see we're just building on that writing. We're starting with those simple sentences, using some activities to get our students used to consistently expanding our sentences, teaching them different text structures, and then again, we can keep building. So there you have 3 different effective strategies for teaching students how to expand their sentences. Just to review them one more time, first is have students ask the question words. Second is have students expand using because, but, so. And then have students practice sentence combinations. All 3 of these are activities you'll definitely want to model with your students, explicitly showing them how to do this. Definitely using that I do, we do, and then you do model. And like I mentioned, you can also have your students do this within the content they are learning because it's kind of a double whammy there. Like I said, you're teaching students how to write more detailed sentences, but then you also get to see what they're learning. It's just a great way for them to share and extend their knowledge. I do want to point out too that if you're doing this with your students connected to their content and doing it as warm-ups, it's great practice for them as they go into their writing block if they have a substantially separate writing block. So if you do have students that are doing more genre writing and working through the writing process at a separate time, all this practice here in their content block is going to carry over to this other writing as well. All 3 of these are great mini lessons that you can do during your writing block to teach students how to expand those sentences. Maybe during the revision portion of their writing when they're going back, take a look at those simple sentences. See how your sentences are worded. Do we have a lot of, repetition there? Do we have a lot of simple sentences? How can we expand them? These skills that students are working on together with you are going to transfer over to their independent writing as long as you consistently remind students and teach students how to use it. I would love to know from you if you use any of these activities with your own students. If not, which ones do you want to try out or which ones do you think would be most successful with your students? Let me know down in the comments. As always, I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up so I know. Make sure you are subscribed to my channel and click that bell. That way you're notified of every new video. See you in the next one. Bye.